Well, hello everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks to all the sponsors of the event. Thanks to Primavera Pro for organizing this amazing summit that we have been curating from GUZZU, which is the company that I have co-founded. We are so proud to be together with such interesting people building amazing projects in this new and emerging space called Web3 that people say it could disrupt music industry. My name is Arnau. As I said, I am the CEO and co-founder of GUZZU, but I have a background working for big corporations in the music industry. I have been working for brands like Jägermeister. I work also for Discogs, which is the biggest music marketplace in the world. And after I got my dream job at Primavera Sound, where I was one of the main bookers. But last year, together with my partner, Frankie, we decided to move to the Web3 space. So I explained my background because I come from big corporations, and normally when you are in big corporations, it's difficult that they do invest in innovation. And here with us today, we have some people who work for big corporations and who works in the field of innovation with something so specific, which is Web3. Then, well, I like it to introduce you guys to introduce yourself. You will be doing this better than myself. If you want, we can start with you, JR. So
sure.
Explain who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so JR Walker. I am the director of Web3 and Metaverse at Sony Music and The Orchard. So yeah, we do everything from consulting to like project managing Web3 projects and managing them, end to end. Prior to Sony, I was working at a Web3 agency where I worked with the likes of Steve Aoki, Timbaland, and then on the Web3 native side, guys like G Money, Catalina Whales, Ledger Market. And yeah, prior to that, was dropping my own project, so I've been in the space for about 4 or 5 years now. And that's me.
What's up, I'm Sam, and I own a studio called Forward. We manage emerging technology solutions for entertainment companies. We work with Coachella. I worked at Coachella for about 7 years before that, focusing on digital experiences for fans and digital partnerships with technology companies. And we also work with Universal Pictures, helping them with some of their Web3 strategy across their film division.
Hey, I'm Jacqui. I'm the head of Web3 and innovation at Warner Records. And basically, I just look at any sort of new technologies and how they can help the artist-fan relationship.
I'm Cristina Perpiña. I'm the general manager of Sky, which is the Spanish CMO for music, audiovisual, and theater. And just to correct, this is not a big corporation. It's a PRO. And I don't think Sky should be involved in actually technology. What we are trying to do is see how we can protect composers and our members facing this new technology.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It's true that Sky is not a corporation or a big corporation, but it's true that it's like a relevant player. And everyone is looking at what the big players are doing normally, because when big players embrace an innovation, it's because mass adoption is near. So Web3 is likely to play a very important role in different fields of the entertainment industry. I remember recently talking with Ursula from Polkadot here. She mentioned that mass adoption from Web3 will likely come from fashion, gaming, and music. So that's likely how it will get. So let's discover what these companies or organizations will be embracing Web3 in their strategies. But before that, I like to hear how would you get engaged? How did you get engaged with Web3 on a personal level? If you like to start, Christina.
Well, I probably am the one which is less involved with Web3, I think perhaps because of my age. But I think what we're trying to do is to try just to see what this is, to discover what we're talking about. Because there's so much noise around, blockchain and artificial intelligence and all of that. And I think my approach to this is first to try to understand what we're talking about, really what we're talking about. But I'd say from a personal view, I'm not a content creator or a musician, so what I tried to see is how that may impact our composers and our members, but obviously not directly because I'm not a content producer.
For me, I was working in management, and it was end of 2020, and one of the artists I was working with at the time, Chet Porter, like a indie, producer, he was doing physical paintings because he just wasn't feeling creatively inclined. And we auctioned off his physical paintings on his website. And one of his fans, who happens to be Cooper Turley, said, "You should sell this as an NFT." And I was like, NFT? And luckily I started investing in crypto in 2017. So it was like a light bulb went off on my head. So we were on Nifty Gateway a couple of weeks later. We were there before the big boom, which was a bummer. And from there I was totally hooked, and did multiple projects with Chet and as well as Alice in Wonderland, who I was also managing at the time.
Cool. And what about you guys? Are you members of a DAO, or have you ever minted an NFT? You're trading with crypto? So
All of the above, yeah. For me personally, I got involved in the space through Coachella. I think Coachella is like the way we think about Coachella across both the physical festival and then all these different digital mediums that we produce experiences on, those as a pedestal for creators, right? And I think what was really interesting to everybody at Coachella at the time was musicians and artists making money off of digital art for the first time. And Coachella is the music and arts festival, so there's all kinds of art there. And so we just immediately began getting involved and thinking about a lot of the video content that we have over the years, performances, and what that could look like as NFTs back when NBA Top Shot was a really big thing. And that kind of just led us down this path into a number of different partnerships that kind of brought us to where we are today.
Yeah, so for me, I got to be honest, I kind of stumbled upon crypto and Web3. A high school basketball teammate of mine made a ton of money, lost a ton of money trading Bitcoin. At the time, I had no idea what it was, try to, decipher, white papers and things like that with not much luck. But then after that, another, ironically enough, another high school friend of mine started working in crypto full time. And, at the time I was working in artist management, dabbling in the music industry. And I remember being so upset about how broken I thought it was, right? Without a ton of knowledge about it. But I remember thinking or looking at Web3 as this silver bullet of sorts. From there, I guess it was really NBA Top Shot. I got introduced to the guys at Dapper, and as a basketball player at the time, and obviously trading basketball cards was something that made perfect sense. So that's really when the light bulb went off for me. Mm-hmm. And then from there it was about getting my hands dirty and doing things. So launched a couple of projects, and I guess the rest is history.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm a bit curious person, and I always like to know things like why big players, like for example Warner or Sony the Orchard or Coachella, has decided to create a specific department on Web3. So I'd like you to explain more or less your experience in there, and if you're feeling alone, or if you have a team working with you, and if it's easy to present ideas and to make it real.
I can go first. I joined Warner Records in January, and I'm a team of one. And I sit within the digital marketing team, so I feel like I'm part of a team, even though I'm sort of on my own island. And I feel like, you know, this was a big moment that Warner Records wanted somebody to focus on this stuff, and they realized, like, we can't sit back. You know, they need an expert in the building and someone to help guide artists in the team. And I feel like at first I kind of came in and sat down with everyone on the digital and the marketing team, and I was like, forget everything you know, let's start it anew, you know, because I think there's a lot of, like, NFT is sort of a bad word. Like, I always find myself saying digital good, digital asset, digital ownership, you know, kind of using new terminology to not scare teams off. But, you know, one of my coworkers, somebody on the marketing team, said something great a couple weeks ago. He's like, I get it. You're just an extension of marketing. And I was like, yep, you got it. So now I feel like all the marketing team is like, hey, Jacqui, come work on this project with me. You know, so it took a little bit of time, but I feel like everyone understands the value that someone like me and, you know, and what we're doing can bring to the space, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I originally started off as a team of one as well in the marketing department, because it makes a lot of sense, right? What we're doing is for consumers, as is marketing, and so I think it does make sense for it to be an extension. We were more of like an innovation department, which was me and then eventually one other person, and in order to really kind of grow that, we had to leave and like be able to grow that outside of the company in partnership. And I think the why is like primarily consumer experience. People love Coachella because they have really fun artistic experiences at Coachella. And I think a lot of these technologies provide new ways to create those things. And then there's also like obviously the artist approach and supporting artists, like I discussed. And then there's the business development approach. And I think that these technologies can unlock new business opportunities for companies when used the right way. And so I think we are kind of a focus on the three of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of what you said resonates for sure. Team of one started in January. We're still working out the kinks internally. Honestly, a lot of, as far as like how we work together. But yeah, I guess you could say, you know, I do fall under like the marketing arm of Sony. As far as like why we got involved, Sony's been kind of like in stealth, trying to, you know, figure out Web3. So a lot of strategic partnerships, like even before I came on board, the past like 2 years, they've been pretty invested in the space. But I think they wanted to actually hire and have an expert in the building when, you know, the bull run's happening, all their artists are coming to the various labels under Sony asking about this thing, like what should we do, what can we do? And none of our guys could really like field those questions or help them. So those artists took that business elsewhere. A lot of the time. So yeah, that's why, and you know how it's going is it's a slow burn. You know, education is definitely the name of the game right now, and we're, you know, just chipping away at it.
It's interesting, you know, because well, you mentioned both that your departments are very new. So you started less than a year ago. So that's very interesting, meaning that we are still on a very early stage of adoption. But well, if the big players are creating this kind of department, it's probably because this will play really an important role. And what about you, Christina? Obviously, it's a different situation because you explained that, but I like you to explain what's the position that Sky has in terms of Web3. So what, like a rights association like you, what opportunities do you see in this field?
Well, I mean, it's curious because you're saying that this is from 1 year ago. Actually, because I just joined Sky, but Sky belongs to CSAC, which is this International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers. And there, with Sky, we've been working on addressing the challenges of artificial intelligence and metaverse for at least 3 years, because we saw that this was coming and this was going to be something very big. I think the idea here, and that's what Sky is trying to do, and most CMOs, at least in Europe, which we're working with, is to try to have like a coordinated approach to try to facilitate licensing, to allow creators to monetize, to be part of this, and especially to allow composers and other creators that they also have to be on the table, that they have to have a seat on the table. That we're talking about big corporations, we're talking about technology, but at the end, you need the musical work or an audiovisual work. So, you know, sometimes we talk so much about technology, but we forget that the core of everything is music or audiovisual. And if you don't protect the creator, if you don't protect the composer, you're going to end up with just, you know, music created by artificial intelligence or completely autonomous AI-generated music, which actually also needs to be fed by pre-existing music, right? So I think the position of Sky and of this, you know, this international approach is to make sure that we're there, that the creator is part of this, that we can educate and explain to composers and to creators what's the risk and what are the opportunities of all of this, but also that they can monetize this, that they're part of this. Because I think when probably all of you are very young for this, but when we had these discussions about peer-to-peer and the internet, I don't know, 20 years ago, I think the reaction of the musical industry and the CMOs was sort of to resist to this, to say, no, we can use technology as a tool to stop this, right? To prevent this from really, and we saw that was a huge mistake. So I think here the approach is exactly the opposite, to make sure that we're part of this, but part of this making sure that the creator is the center of all of this.
That really resonates, I think, because like so much about this whole space is about ownership and like self-empowerment, right? And if you don't start at like the nucleus of what it's all about, which is the human beings who are making the art, and then from there figure out the what and the how and the why, it probably isn't going to work out very well. Yeah.
Well, and it was about to be like the super hype a few months ago or a year ago exactly, but then it came the crypto crash. There were a lot of newspapers talking about that NFTs were a scam, and still people do not trust in NFTs. Well, you mentioned earlier, everyone is looking to avoid the NFT word, and then suddenly AI appeared, and everyone started looking towards AI. So still bullish about Web3. So is still the future. So how would we be normalizing this?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, you weren't able to sort of track ownership prior to being able to use blockchain technology. So it's not a matter of like, unfortunately, Web3 is tied to crypto in a certain sense, but it's more of like what this technology can do. And I think it's once people understand what it does and that isn't this bad thing, then listen, there's bad actors and players in this space. And I think we're slowly but surely seeing that go away. But like, I remember, I started investing in crypto in 2017, then we had a crash, and then DeFi came along, and NFTs came along. So I think it's a healthy pullback, but it's, all of those of us who work on this space, we have to do, it's a bit harder now, we have to really educate people and be like, here's all the cool things you can do, this is the technology that does it. You can buy it a credit card, you can literally do all this stuff, and a fan never has to know that they're touching crypto. And they don't have to if they don't want to.
Yeah, and I think like all of those things for sure, and maybe like a point of advice, like consumers don't really care about technology, and I think every new wave of technology is a tale as old as time, right? Everybody talks about it's AI, it's Web3, it's crypto, and consumers actually just don't care. What they care about is like what value is being provided to my life, or how is this making my life more entertaining, or connecting me with friends, or helping me make money, right? And I think that when you abstract away all of the technology and just focus on those things, that's when new technologies really break out and really become adopted.
I don't know if you guys have seen this series, Netflix series called The Playlist about Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You've seen that. I feel there are a lot of similarities between that time and the current moment. So I obviously didn't. I was so young to live at that time, but I feel it's exactly the same thing. So we are about to see something that will change forever, but no one is trusting in it yet. So.
Yeah, and I think it's more of a matter, it always takes time. I mean, even social media and all sorts of streaming, there was always this hesitation. But I think it's important for artists and creators in other fields to, don't get left behind and let the big players decide how it gets used. I come from management, so for me, I'm always thinking artists first, even though I'm part of a big corporation, and it's always about how does this bring value and how can this help artists and fans alike. And so I think it's similar, but it's different at the same time because it's so geared on towards ownership versus, when streaming happened, it was more about, who owns digital music and who's going to put it out the fastest and make deals with the majors. And that's sort of what you see play out. And we're sort of dealing with it now. There's a backlash towards streaming and the payout royalties. And I think that's why Web3 is exciting to many artists.
Yeah, cool. Well, one of the critics I have been hearing from yesterday from the panels that the people attended was that no one was talking about cases of success, or at least people was trying to avoid talking about success, and I don't understand really why no one is talking about cases of success in the Web3 space. So I like it you guys to explain or get in further detail on what you consider that something that involved Web3 strategy that you developed, it came up with a case of success involving NFTs, metaverse, AI, whatever. So it's now the moment to explain the audience. There is hope, and there is really examples that things that can be done to generate revenue and to the artist, and so you can explain if you want.
I could take a little bit of a different spin on it. I think success, right, very relative and objective, but I think that there are some really interesting social media platforms out there, Nostr, Mastodon, there's a few that I'm forgetting, and I think the key difference with these social media platforms is that you own your own data, you own the posts that you've made, the photos that you upload, the things that you've liked, and if you want to leave that platform and go to another social media platform, you just connect your wallet or your profile and all of that stuff is uploaded. And I think that's really, really interesting because it kind of presents a paradigm shift for how people own their own data across these different platforms that we interact on. And when I think about in my opinion, 5 years from now, investing in crypto or NFTs could be just 20% of the total value that's provided with this technology, whereas a lot of it really could come down to data ownership and not being locked into platforms and some of the really interesting capabilities that I think blockchain unlocks.
Yeah, I think the platform thing is such an important thing to mention. Every time I'm talking to different companies or partners, I'm not interested in helping some new platform, whether it's Web3 or ownership. It has to be a white label service. It should be owned and operated on artist sites. I think eventually we'll see how that all plays out, but I think there's such an important thing as we let basically 3-4 big companies own the whole internet, and that's what this is in response to. And every time I explain to my friends who don't even work in entertainment what Web3 is, I'm like, think about your data, your Instagram photo. You don't own that, they're monetizing that. That's your content, and that's always what everyone thinks. In terms of success, for me, my biggest success was in 2021 when I was in management, and I did a project with Alice in Wonderland, and at the time it was Bored Ape happened, but it wasn't really, it was slowly bubbling up, and we did a PFP project. It was called the Wonder Quest. Alice in Wonderland loves fantasy, so you basically got a dragon egg, and you could hatch it or not, and we partnered with Decentraland, and they gave us a whole build, and you had a token-gated experience there with quests and performances and stuff, and that went on sale, and we grossed over $3 million, so that was fun for me. And then most recently at Warner Records, we had an artist, BB Rexa, who did a song with Snoop Dogg about smoking weed in space that came out on 420. For those of you who don't live in America, 420 is the International Pot Smoking Day. And I had this crazy idea that let's create a virtual spaceship where everyone can smoke weed together. And it was 8 days before her album came out. So you got to preview her songs, and you were a little avatar, and you rolled a joint, and it was all on her website, and it was a really fun little metaverse experience. Didn't generate any revenue, but it was just like a very cool marketing play, and the fans absolutely loved it. And I just thought it was something really fun that you could do. And I know Sam will have a lot to say about this, but everyone always talks about how all album and single releases in the future will be like game-like. And it's like, let's do it now, today. Why wait? We have the technology now.
Yeah.
Yeah, from our POV, like at Sony in the Orchard, we feel like 90% of what we're seeing out of the space, the Web3 music space, when it comes to projects specifically, so not like platforms and different products and services, but music projects that artists are putting out, they fall in either two categories for the most part. So you have your drops that are like what we call skeuomorphic, which essentially add nothing new. Like there's no like real value. There's no reason why this thing should actually be an NFT or be like a Web3 thing. It's more so, artists and their teams leaning into that side of things for the novelty kind of aspect of it, and to get people to spend their dollars on this quote unquote new thing. And at the end of the day, it's empty promises. And then the other side of it is, maybe they're too innovative, or they're too catering towards this echo chamber that is, kind of like the degen world, for lack of a better term. So people who are very familiar with Web3 are kind of buying into buy, sell, trade, essentially. So what we view as successful is, a project that actually adds something new and real kind of like tangible value to music fans. So not as much like traders. So, you feel like the key metric for success for a while was like minting out, X amount of dollars. But for us, we're looking at different metrics. And I'll give you an example. I haven't launched a ton, in the few months that I've been in the seat that I'm in now. But we did launch something for the metal community. So it's a band called the Shredders. It's a virtual band, so similar to, like the Gorillas, you could say. The team behind it is, kind of like iconic real metal musicians. And they wanted to create a space for metal fans who they felt like were getting like left out of this increasingly like digital world that we're living in today. And so we did that. Kind of the idea was to really put, this band in the community's hands. They kind of control it. They vote different things into existence. And it was very well received for the most part from the metal community, who's super vocal about what they do and don't like. But it's cool because you could take that feedback and kind of like implement some of it. And I guess like on the innovative end of that project, we wanted to test a couple of things, and we're going to continue to do that. This just launched, by the way, like about a month ago now, and minted out, which I was just saying isn't like a key metric, but we were excited to see that. But anyways, on the innovative end, we wanted to test out, what would happen, or how we could get like the community to rally around this band. And so we linked the first digital collectible offering, which was an access pass. Everyone's pretty clear about like what that means, but we linked the access pass to Spotify data. That was like a long and hard conversation with Spotify because they're pretty strict about commercial rights and things like that. But the NFT was linked to Spotify data, so it essentially like powers up visually in holders' wallets as the Shredders hit these different streaming milestones. Different rewards are unlocked, et cetera, and we're going to continue to kind of test that model for subsequent drops.
Interesting. And well, this question goes to Cristina, being the representative of the main collective society for rights in Spain. I like to know how Sky would use Web3 to help the artists that you represent to generate more revenue.
Well, I mean, what Sky does is ensure that their creators, that their members are correctly remunerated. So we're talking about all these new spaces and platforms and services, but but even going back to Spotify, very, very few composers actually can make a living out of Spotify. I mean, it's, we're talking about all these great opportunities, but at the end, if nobody's paying for anything, creators will not continue to create because they need to make a living out of this. So Web3 and metaverse and all of that, well, what Sky is trying to do is to make sure, what is this? Is this like a live stream? Then we have these rights which are involved. We need to get a license. The problem here is that I think all creators, all composers are really excited. They want to get their music out there. They want to get their works out there. It's not just to make money. They really want to make their works accessible to everybody. But if there's no return for that, they have to find other jobs, obviously. And we just want to make it possible for composers to make a living out of their work. And when you talk about all these new metaverse and all of that, I always think that it's, these really good ideas and these really, really cool technologies, whatever. But we're always forgetting about the composer, It's always the intermediaries. And it's always been the same way. I mean, even the beginning of collective management, it was in theater, and it was directors and authors trying to make a living and knowing that there was an intermediary there, which was actually the one which is putting the space and charging the money for the consumer. But they always needed the work. And then when internet started, it was the same. You had the internet platform saying, oh, I'm just putting the space. But they were the ones making the money. And here, for me, it sounds a little bit similar. I mean, we've all talked about technology. It's all great. I think composers love technology. They use it to create. But if you don't remunerate correctly the work, the musical work, they're just not going to be more works because they can't live from this. And so what's Sky's approach to this? Let's license this. Let's make it as easy as possible. In many cases, we don't really know what, I used to be the head of the digital licensing department at Sky. I remember people would come to me with really nice ideas, really cool ideas. Many times I didn't even know what they were talking about. But, it sounded really cool. It sounded like, oh, we're going to get all the music out there. They're just going to, with this little device I have, and I can do this and that, and I have an avatar. But at the end, it's, most of these, unfortunately, weren't very successful. But Sky, what they have to do is to make sure we can give quickly a license and that we don't do any type of obstacles so that business can develop. But we have to think about the author. We have to remunerate the author. If we don't remunerate the author correctly, there will simply be no content for all you guys to put in your spaceship and,
But don't you think blockchain technology could help an artist get paid faster? Because I know from my management days, I had an artist who didn't have a publishing deal, and we just signed an admin deal because you're like, you just have money sitting there. For those of you who don't know, you need a publishing deal to just unlock money, and that's their whole job. And I think with blockchain technology, like let's say Spotify paid well, and Spotify, your stream happens, your 0.001 cent goes directly to your account right afterwards, versus now where it takes some months to get paid. To me, that's
it's true.
It's not what I'm spending my time doing, but I think to me that's going to be the game changer.
I've listened to this many times these past years with blockchain and with other types of services where you could directly link the musician or the composer with his public, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, you need strong rights. You need strong copyright laws in order to allow that creator to actually be entitled to receive something in exchange. I think if you leave the creator alone by himself, in some cases they'll be successful. They'll be able to monetize directly with an NFT or whatever. But most of them need the protection of the entire community of creators. That's when you put all the repertoires together and you offer that to Spotify, to whatever, that's what makes that repertoire that you're capable of really negotiating a good deal. Because if you're on your own, unless you're a really, really big superstar, which usually it's not the case, especially for young creators, you just don't have the leverage to negotiate with these platforms. And at the end, there are big giants behind this, and they want your data. And they're not interested in the musical works. They're interested in your data so they can sell it to Google and to YouTube and to whatever, and to Microsoft, so that they can, we're also, one of the things we're a little bit worried, is, all these platforms, you have all these algorithms which are actually telling you what you have to listen to, what you have to watch, where's the transparency there? I mean, my kids, they have no choice, really, because the machine is telling them what they have to listen to, what they have to buy, and what they're going. I mean, last time I was on Netflix, I didn't even end up watching anything because there were so many recommendations, and there were so many different, links. If you like this, you'll like this. And that at the end, I didn't even watch any movie because I was too exhausted after so many, so many recommendations and playlists and everything. I ended up just saying, okay, I'll not. It's too late anyway. But the idea that I think it's almost like a too romantic idea. You have to protect the author. And at the end, there may be, many of these initiatives are, young people, but I think usually they're controlled by very powerful companies, which are controlling all of this, and they're controlling the data. So I think we have to make all of this much more transparent. I'm talking about algorithms, I'm talking about who is behind all of this, who is really manipulating all of this. And you have to allow for a safe environment for creators to be able to create. I have a little bit the impression also that they're all almost a little bit like obsessed with having to put content out there, like hysterically, because they have to get viral, they have to be on all the platforms, they have to be on all social media. It's almost like you're not letting the creator create, because they have this pressure to put all this content out there. They don't even call it a musical work anymore. It's content, So I think, it's a great idea, but I just think that we have to sort of settle down and remember that we're talking about creators which need time to create.
It's very interesting, and I hope there are a few questions after, and we can get the discussion further, because it's really, really interesting what were you saying now. But this question goes to Jacqui, because she represents Warner, which is one of the majors that has been showing more advantage in building and deploying strategies into the Web3 space more actively. We were discussing before that in Web3 there's no competition, but there is competition between companies. I like you to explain briefly what are the top strategies that you are now doing at the current moment. So what have you been doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I actually was at Universal before this, and part of the reason I left was because I wanted to be at a more innovative major. And, obviously, I work at Warner Records, so I'm on the frontline label, so I'm the one who actually, is working day in, day out with the artists and their teams and the marketing teams. And then we were actually talking about it, sort of the corporate teams who help do those larger deals. And, they have deals with Sandbox. I think there's OpenSea, I think it's public, or on the road to that, and various different companies. But for me, it's more just about finding the right opportunities and being part of a company that doesn't just say no right off the bat and says, all right, let's find a way to make this work. Let's make sure, everything looks right and is safe and the correct way to do it. But I feel like being at, the smallest of the three majors, their incentive to be innovative and push things is great. And we have our new CEO who comes from YouTube, who's really building, our tech infrastructure. So I feel like it's a good place to really experiment and work on these sort of things. But at the end of the day, it's a major label, and the focus is not always, I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm going to reel back.
Okay, JR, you work for the Orchard, but at the same time you work for Sony, which is like another major record label that have been deploying some Web3 strategies. I wanted to extend another question that might be embarrassing, but we are here just to discuss. So Web3 wants to bring the creators the control over their content, over their rights. So where the major record labels fit into this new paradigm?
I guess I'll give you a cop-out answer. We're figuring it out. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out how to add the most value. I think the I think we've moved from this territory. Like when I started at Sony, I feel like we were, for the most part, like the teams that I would speak to. So like legal, finance, marketing, all these teams that I have to work with now. The vibe, for lack of a better word, was that Web3 is potentially this existential threat to like our business, like our model. For reasons that you were alluding to. But I think, like I was saying, like education was a huge part of my first few months in the door. So now I think people see the opportunity. People also, and to be a little bit more direct, I think people see us investing time and energy into Web3 as an opportunity to actually retain this talent and like unlock new opportunities for ourselves as well.
I just wanted to add to that, because actually when I was at Universal, I spent a lot of discussions, what is the role of the label in Web3, and trying to figure that out, And I truly believe that it's part of your sort of marketing plan. So for every album or single release, you always have, what's our social media strategy? What's our tour strategy? Our merch strategy? And all these sorts of, different verticals. And now you're gonna have, what's my Web3 strategy? So when you're releasing anything, you're always gonna have it be part of your marketing plan. And whether it's purely marketing promo play or if it's revenue driven, it's kind of both. Or is it integrating into merch? I love playing with like NFCs and doing the physical and digital and that sort of stuff. So there's so many opportunities that it can all play in together, but I think it's really part of that marketing strategy, and that's what major labels are. You sign with them for two reasons: money and for the marketing and promo. And without that, I think those are the two main areas that they can really help. So that's sort of what I believe, and I see we're gonna see as we move forward.
Okay, and we were highlighting before Warner as one of the companies in the music space that have been more innovative, but we need to talk about Coachella as well, because Coachella was one of the major brands to first use NFTs as a strategy, and it was really a big success. Then it happened something and everything went down. My question is, are you still bullish on NFTs? And if you are still bullish, how has the concept of the NFT changed towards the first strategy that you took?
Yeah, so the first strategy was like early 2022 and was very much so of the moment where we were creating NFT media, attaching physical goods and benefits and experiences to those, and then selling them to fans, and then rewarding the artist that created that. So, there's over 6 figures given out to photographers and videographers and musicians and like illustration artists at Coachella. And then people got really amazing photo books and posters and lifetime tickets to Coachella, which was like those NFTs sold for a lot, but they also have literally lifetime value. And that was the first time, because of NFT technology, the first time that Coachella could ever sell lifetime passes, because someone could buy that, and then when they get tired of Coachella 6 years later, they can go sell that to somebody else, and it retains its value. So it's really a win-win for everybody. The way that we think about it now is, in addition to what we want to do, the collaborations we want to build with performing artists, very much so around loyalty. I think that, and that's like really the hot topic word for NFTs and crypto as it relates to big brands these days. You see it with Nike and Swoosh and Starbucks and their whole loyalty program that they built. And loyalty really is about like knowing who your consumers are, knowing the actions that they take, and then rewarding them for those actions, right? And NFTs provide a really, really great way to do that. If you can let people, by just scanning a QR code or an NFC chip, tell you the actions that they've done online or offline, and they can receive a token for that. That token can be free, it can be a few dollars, it can be $30. In a large amount of cases, for Coachella, we see these as being just free. And that gives us a group of people who have taken this particular action that we can then reward with a personalized experience online or a personalized experience at the festival itself. So I think that it's a really interesting innovation on the loyalty model, and it makes that data around who your consumers are and what they're doing a lot more visible and also a lot more shareable, right? Like if we have, random example, Coachella has a big partner that's going to be on site activating. They want to reward everybody who went and did this action. They can see that data. It's just transparent on the blockchain, right? And it allows people to really start building their own kind of tacked on loyalty programs around Coachella consumers. And I think that's why you see Starbucks and Nike and some of these other big brands really investing in Web3 loyalty.
Yeah, it's very interesting. No, it's in the end, a festival has a big community, a huge community, same as artists, same as record labels, for example. So it's very interesting how in the next two years, the use of NFTs will probably change completely. But I like to extend the question to all the room, and I like you to raise the hands to all those who are still bullish on NFTs. Who of you are still bullish on NFTs?
How many of you have done or been involved in the NFT project? Cool.
Ooh, and you're not all bullish. Uh-oh.
No, my question is specifically because well, there are a lot of interesting platforms like Sound, Serenade, GUZZU, who are thinking of, or trying to put a new format of releasing music in music NFTs. No? Mm-hmm. Then there is another use of the NFTs that could be community. But my question now is to GR, and is that do you think that NFTs will be a new format of edition for artists, for musicians, to be releasing them?
Are you saying to release music in the form of NFTs or just collectibles? Or
in general, collecting, listening, owning, be part of the community? So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely bullish. Yeah, I think brands, for reasons that he alluded to. I don't think it's just musicians, but yeah, definitely artists.
And does it make sense that a digital music distribution platform like The Orchard gets integration with music NFT platforms like another DSP, just to provide content leads to them? This is something that you see it is likely to happen in the next 2 years, for example?
I think so. I certainly hope so. I think, yeah, it's just like I was saying earlier, a slow burn. We've been operating a certain way for however long. So it's a big ship to turn around. Yeah, through conversations with guys like you guys and Revelator and others, I think we all, even the higher ups, see the value in it. So I'm hoping it's kind of a matter of time.
Cool. Well, I got surprised, I must say, that I expected more hope on NFTs in the room, but well, I mean.
Wait, let's rephrase it. Are you bullish on Web3? What'd she say?
Maybe we can get a mic from the control and.
What word do you like to use now instead?
Inclusive? Sorry, whoa. I just find it a really cringe term, and I just if you say, are you bullish on Web3, I'm never going to raise my hand to that, because I just, it doesn't feel like a term that, it feels so specific to the space. And when you're working with musicians, I don't work with specifically Web3 only musicians. They work, in all realms. And so I don't know, that term just feels quite uncomfortable to me. So that's why I didn't raise my hand to that, even though I'm working on something in that space. Sorry.
No, by the way, I totally relate. Never use these terms, in my day-to-day job, but when you're kind of in this microcosm of Web3 people, you kind of just all right, let's just go with the flow. But yeah, and I think that's, to your point, I think that's part of the problem, is the crypto bro culture is sort of what's the off-putting part of, where Web3 has gone recently, and that's why I feel like we kind of need a rebrand. All right, so let's try again. Who's excited and feels like Web3 can help the music industry move forward? There we go.
Me too. Okay, well, is there any other question in the room? Okay.
Hi, hello. You've been talking about the value proposition for the users and the artist all the time, and I would like to know if in the pilots that you have been involved with NFTs and blockchain, that if there is something that you have done that would have been impossible to do without blockchain or NFTs. I mean, there is an alternative technology that you could have used to do the same thing, or it was indispensable to have NFTs and blockchain?
One of the examples that I gave around lifetime passes for Coachella, that would have been impossible on any other database, only possible through like true custody of that digital asset, right? Another thing would have been going back to like the community and loyalty piece, being able to organize people by common interests and activities that they've partaken in, and allowing them to like meet each other on Discord, and having NFTs in order to go certain places at Coachella. We wouldn't have been able to do that before either.
Cool. I think there was another question.
Hi. Hello? Okay. So I wanted to ask, do you have any recommendations for like solid NFT strategies for like more sort of grassroots projects? Just for context, I get the feeling that these strategies generally work when artists or brands or labels, be it festivals, have already like very big sort of fan bases. And then out of that pre-existing fan base, there's a subsection that is kind of into the NFT space already. So within that subcategory, then this is where these strategies seem to really have an impact. So say that now, we're working with like much smaller projects, much smaller artists, and you don't really know, I mean, they have relatively small fan bases, and you don't know what portion of that might be into this space. How can we leverage this technology to increase the fan base in general and to, engage more the people that might actually be into it?
No, I think that's an excellent question. Right now you kind of have, there's more established artists, and then there's specific Web3 artists who, drop on sound and audience and all those sort of places. And I think, for me, kind of the first step is have a Discord server. I actually hate Discord, but I, use it all the time and advise and help, But that's the one place where there's no algorithm, unlike, social media, where you can directly communicate one-to-one with your fans and find out what they want. Do they want a loyalty pass? All right, cool, let's do one. Do they not want one? Great, do they just want to do community meetups? But I think using these, I now call them community chat platforms, as sort of step one to seeing how large your audience is, There's this common phrase, 10,000 strong. So in our current music ecosystem, many people talk about this. You have your casual listeners and your super fans. They're treated all the same, but imagine a world where you can reward your super fans. Is it 10 people, 100, 1,000? It doesn't matter. You should super serve them, because that lifetime deep connection you have with them, they're fans forever. They're going to evangelize that band to everyone else. And now you can reward them, or they can showcase that they're the #1 fan, or they were first to listen, they went to X amount of shows. That's, sort of the value where it can add. So I think you have to sort of start at day one. Like, I think that's super interesting. The reason we don't have those use cases yet is because it's hard to do. So it's easier to do it more established. But I'm definitely looking at, smaller artists and like, let's start them in that field. And I think especially in the electronic space, that audience is always the first to sort of, like new technologies. And that's an excellent place to sort of experiment and try.
Couldn't agree more. What I really loved was like figure out what they want first. You don't need any technology to do that, right? Just like talk to the fans, figure out what they love about whatever community it is you're trying to serve. And then don't refer to it as Web3 or NFTs. It doesn't really matter, right? Like this is just a pass to some sort of experience or benefit, and it can be positioned as such.
Yep.
Yeah, just wanted to test the panel's kind of reaction to sort of a positioning statement and see what you guys react from your different positions. And this kind of ties into what Arnau said about the playlist and the Spotify series. It seems like denying that Web3 is going to be a thing for music is just not plausible, because we went from analog to digital, the CD era. We were playing CDs in the 80s and 90s, and you wouldn't deny that we'd go to downloads, and that was MP3 and P2P file sharing. And then, that went to streaming and, moved to Web 2. Like, we're not going to stay in Web 2 forever as a technology, and music's, not going to be exempt from that. So isn't it just sort of, what's the word? I guess inevitable that it's more about when and how than if music will go to Web 3? Do you guys agree with that, or would you postulate otherwise?
I totally agree. I also think it's, what is your definition of Web3? I'm sure we probably all here have 5 different ways to explain in our worldview. So obviously technology is constantly evolving, so of course it's going to go somewhere else. Everyone always talks about like, oh, Web 2.5. It's like, are we at Web 2.2 or are we at Web 2.7? Like, when are we getting to Web 3 and what is Web 3? And time will tell.
Yeah, just to add to that, I feel like, I don't know, it's also going to be hard to tell like when we are, like I guess exactly what you just said, right? Like I think it's, when it does happen, it's, not going to feel like the bull run of whatever, like 2021, 2020. Like I think it's going to be a lot more like subtle than that. I think it's going to be a layer that is kind of like integrated into like how we do things now. So yeah, that's the only thing I'd add to your response.
Yeah. Like nobody cares when like your favorite photo platform switches from JPG to PNG, right? And it's going to be probably a similar type of switch, and it's going to unlock some new capabilities that people will love, and nobody will really know. And it's like day by day, nothing changes, and then looking back, everything's different, right? I feel like that's usually the case with new technology, especially entertainment space.
Because I'm probably the only one which is a little bit different from the rest. I think that probably it's inevitable. But I think that if we're not careful, you may end up with very low quality content. And probably that was not the case before. I think the big difference now is that before it was, as you say, the change between analog to digital for MP3 or whatever. But I think here the risk is that you're making composers compete also against machines, and this enormous technology, but for me, the risk is if you don't treat creators correctly, there's just not going to be content in the future. You need to remunerate correctly in order to give that incentive so that they keep creating quality music or quality content. If you just focus on technology, I know you have to do that, and we have to allow all these new platforms to develop. But at the end, if you forget about the content, there's just not going to be anything to include in these platforms or to give an NFT next to,
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are more questions. I think there was a question over there and then one here.
Thank you. Well, this is probably more like a conceptual question, following what Christina said before, and also what you were asking Arnau about what's the role of the labels in this new decentralized universe that we are looking at now. But I think that even now we are seeing many artists becoming more than just artists. They have to be community manager and press officer and video editor and I don't know how many things more. So I think that decentralized sounds great in terms of what's the user experience. But I also think that they always have to be a team to help the artist to be focused on what he has to do, that is making music.
Yep.
So decentralized doesn't mean that we don't need professionals to become a team for the artists doing what they want to do. Maybe this is not a question, but I really wanted to make this clear because I think that I may be suspect because I spent most of my career in a label, but I definitely think that there must be people like you here that need to help the artists to become artists. Thank you.
Just in relation to this, there was this article, I think, like a couple of months ago, maybe half a year ago. It wasn't related to music. It was related to audiovisual, and it was like a manifesto that was published by French directors and screenwriters. They were like trying to object to what they call the Uberization of culture, because they were saying that we are being forced to produce so much so quickly, to put everything everywhere, that at the end, they just don't have time to really create, no? And I think that's one of the risks of all the social media and Web3 and everything is that they have to do so many things and get out so much content so quickly that, you know, sometimes they forget that these are human beings which need a creative process in order to make something, no, to produce content.
I totally agree with you, but I think you're missing the point on Web3. I actually had an interesting conversation that just happened about a week and a half ago. I'm working with an artist on this platform called Medallion. It's a white label service, so it lives owned and operated on the artist's website. And you know, the manager was saying, we're just so concerned about bringing all these things to the artist, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, I totally get it. Like, I don't care about TikTok, but you have to play that ball game, and it's an unfortunate part of where the music ecosystem is right now, and that's a whole separate conversation. But you know, the manager came back and said, it's basically a community, you know, pass or a plot, you know, for fans, and the manager came back and goes, the artist loves this. He's so excited about this. He'll actually, because we did a very low lift, he's like, he'll actually do all these extra things and all this stuff that we were all sort of surprised. He's like, this is so much better than me having to film a TikTok. You know what I mean? Because forget, at the end of the day, you're nothing without your fans. Your art is so important, of course. But if you're not delivering to your super fans, then what's the point? And that's sort of my ethos and what I'm trying to build at Warner is deepening that connection and rewarding fans. And I find it very rare that an artist doesn't want to do that. Posting on TikTok, I get and I agree with.
Okay. Well, we are running out of time. There's still last question. Please do it very quickly, and we will wrap up. Chris.
Okay, so Christina, thank you for your intervention and for taking care of artists and authorship, because it has already been seen in the history of music industry that big tech corporations and big players, I mean, have harmed lots of artists and their rights. But you mentioned a word that is transparent. So, Sky is not known for their transparency. So, have you thought about using blockchain technology for all the payments and all these secret formulas you have for the payments and make it transparent for artists?
Okay, well, I think the problem with the transparency with respect to our own members, to Sky members, I wouldn't say that's an issue now, because every single member of Sky, when they receive their settlements, they can actually track practically every single source from where they're receiving their royalties. Not only Sky, but many CMOs in the world have been analyzing blockchain to see if it can provide any benefit for collective management. It actually doesn't really provide any practical benefit. It's not an issue of transparency. The thing is that usually in the case of collective management, you need an initial contract between the author and the publisher. It's not really related to smart contract or anything. You just need the contract. And then once you have that contract and you register the works, I think the problem that most societies or collective management societies have is with the data, that it's very difficult in many cases to track the works on digital platforms because of the different data. The data may be incorrect, it's not accurate. There's always problems with linking the ISWC with the ISRCs, the IPIs. I think it's more a problem of having so many works which are used on so many different platforms which are not using the same type of codes and data, and that's what makes a lot of works, what we call, go to the black box because they're not correctly identified. But many societies have tried to see whether blockchain could actually help. I'm not a technician, so I can't say why, but because here societies are competing against each other, so I can talk on behalf of Sky, but when Sky is competing against SAFTEM or PRS or ASCAP or BMI, none of these societies are using blockchain in order to track works for royalties. They can use it for other issues, but they're not using it for that because that's not really the problem. The problem is the actual data which are used by the entire platform digital industries to identify the work. So I think it's a problem of, you have to have the same type of identifiers for everything. And that's not the case right now. But I can't reply from a very technical perspective, but there's really no real blockchain working with CMOs, because I don't think that's really the problem. I think that's more an issue for banks or to ensure secure transactions. In the case of collective management, it's not a problem of legal security, it's a problem of tracking the works and how they're identified in the different platforms. So I haven't really seen the benefit, but I know that all the IT teams are working on trying to incorporate new technology to be able to identify works quicker and cheaper, you know? But I have to say, it's not an issue. I wouldn't say that there's a problem with transparency by societies. If it's probably an issue of not being able to correctly identify the works, because there's just so many billions of lines out there.
Okay, well, we literally ran out of time. There were lots of different subjects that we've been covering. I bet there are more questions. The speakers will be around here or downstairs. If you want to make them some personal questions, feel free to do it. I really want to thank you for being here, for trusting in this event. And, well, just a reminder, now we have a break, we go downstairs. There is another panel at 3:30, very interesting here, with people from OpenSea, Zora Foundation, Audios. It's going to be amazing. And please do not forget to redeem your POAP. There are some stickers in the chairs. It's the POAP from the event, and you can redeem it for free. Thank you so much, everyone, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.